Hello, everyone. This is Steve Bennett, Senior Director of Competition and Coach Development for Special Mix Maryland. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight for the Head of Delegation webinar number 1 for our 2020 Winter Games coming up. And yes, it is 2020, so Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday season and continues to have that. And welcome to the new year. We also have Mike Sarnowski, our Vice President of Sports and Competitions here, joining us, who will talk on some of the information this evening, and Zach Cintron, one of our sports directors who oversees snowshoeing for the Winter Games, as our moderator. So as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can use the panel to either raise your hand to indicate you have a question to ask, or you can type your question into the text box. And like I said, Zach will be monitoring those questions and addressing those throughout the webinar, or stopping me throughout the webinar. One of the things I want to also mention, as always, this is being recorded, and in the next day or two, it will be up on our coaches resource page. For those of you, hopefully everyone's familiar with it, but if not, these are some links to the coaches resource page, how to find it, where to go on our main website. There's a lot of great information there that most questions that coaches would have, so that you can relay those to your coaches and or yourselves. Check there first, and if you can't find the information, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us in the sports department, and we can either upload that information to the website so others can see it, and keep us informed of any information that you think would be valuable that's not currently on the coaches resource page, so we can continue to update that, make that a very, very valuable tool for all. As a reminder, there is no password needed or anything like that. That is open to the public. Anyone is ready and available to check that as we need. So again, just a reminder on the coaches resource page. So the purpose for tonight's meeting is basically just to have a conversation and open the lines of communication with you guys as leaders of your programs and as HODs or serving in that capacity at this point. Just relay some updated information as it currently stands. Obviously, leading up to the Winter Games with weather, there's going to be some potential updates relating to weather. We'll talk about any changes and key issues leading up to the games. And again, just start the communication and allow for feedback from you guys as key leaders. Make sure that everyone's ready for the games as they are coming soon. So again, we're not going to have all the answers. There are a few things that just came up today, actually within the last 15 minutes, that I'll mention in just a second. But also wanted to let you know, here is the upcoming webinars. So this HOD webinar does not replace the coaches webinars for Alpine and Snowshoeing. This information went out in the area memo, and hopefully, and I know it has been shared with the coaches who have signed up that we're aware of. It also lists our second HOD webinar on the 13th. Please note that in the area memo, the snowshoeing webinar and the HOD webinar were scheduled both on the 13th at 7 o'clock. That was a typo, so please note the updated time for the second HOD webinar, still on the 13th, just an hour later, so that will go off at 8 p.m. again for the HODs on the 13th of February. Housing information. I don't know if Jane Dunn is with us, but I'll go ahead and get started. Jane Dunn, hopefully most of you are familiar with her. If not, she's does a lot of stuff for us as an organization, one of which serves as the housing director for the Winter Games, as well as Summer Games and other things. So we do have contracts with the same hotels that we've had in last year, and we're hoping to, well, we will use those same hotels. What I can't say at this point, obviously, is where each delegation will be housed. It will be based on, obviously, the number and of participants and how that comes together. We are having the option once again this year, as we did last year, to bring in cots so that the hotels in the Ramada Plaza, the hotel rooms there, can accommodate an additional body, so that can compact the delegations. I know those who took advantage of that option last year It worked out really well, so we're planning to do that again. But Jane Dunn will reach out to you if she hasn't already. I know she drafted her memo today and is looking to send that out no later than the 9th to everyone. Again, that will allow you to coordinate your housing requests and your room assignments with Jane Dunn. As always, please do not contact the hotels directly. We have those streamlined communications between Jane Dunn, myself, and the hotels. And in the past, there have been individuals who have called, and it's just created confusion and messed up our rooming blocks, etc. So again, I just want to stress that out. Also, as always, we have our standard 3-to-1 ratio. So that's 3 athletes to a supervisory personnel, whether that's a coach, a HOD, chaperone, etc. That is the ratio that has been allowed for the housing of Winter Games. The highlights this year, we as always are looking for roles for the athletes to fill that not necessarily have competitive roles at Winter Games. There's about 18 different scenarios we've come up with this year, and I won't go through all of them, but it's anywhere from being on the evaluation team to helping with awards to the opening ceremony, the competition roles to help support, whether it's with results, volunteer services, the special events, getting surveys completed, all kinds of different opportunities. So Jason Schrimmel has been working with the management team to come up with those. We'll be sending those out. But if you have individuals who are not in a competition role primarily that you think would be a good fit in an athlete leadership role, we would love to hear that. You can send that information to myself, Steve Bennett, or to Jason Schrimmel, and we'll work through those. I say non-competitive athletes, but there are some roles that competitive athletes that will be attending Winter Games could take on. Some of that is, at the dance and doing evaluations with the athletes, that type of stuff. So it's not limited to athletes who aren't competing, but obviously there's a lot more roles available to those who are not competing. Just to stress that Winter Games is a 3-day event again. The time trials will be on the Sunday, and then we'll roll into finals on Monday and Tuesday. So it's a 1-day weekend, 1-day event, or one weekend event with Monday and Tuesday thrown in there, but it is all together as one large event. Like I said, the opening ceremony will be conducted on Sunday evening, as we did last year, and that will be at the Whitetail Resort at the end of the day after dinner. Dinner for Sunday evening will be at Whitetail Resort, and the management team is currently looking at schedules. I know last year there was some concern about too much downtime leading into dinner and then the opening ceremony. So the management team has taken that into consideration, and we're working out the schedules for the time trials on Sunday of Winter Games. That will be coming out eventually, and again, we're looking at having that on the coach's resource page once it's available, but we will also send it out through email communications as well. The dance for Monday night, which will be at the Ramada Plaza, is Under the Sea. That's kind of like your Aquaman, Little Mermaid kind of stuff, all those movies that have come out. That's what the theme is, so you can feel free to pass that along. That athletes, family members, and others are always curious as to what the theme of the dance is, so we wanted to share that with you at this point. Family hospitality, we are combining. In the years past, we have looked at having one for snowshoeing and Alpine. With some constraints we have this year, we're combining that into one. The location of that and services are to be determined at this point, as where we've had it in the past up in the upper level in the solstice room is unavailable to us this year due to their being open and operational for the general public. So Debbie Credito and Jeff Abel have been working on where we want to have the family hospitality at the Whitetail Resort. In addition to that, we have a family reception, which will be at the Homewood Suites, which is a short walk or a very, very quick drive from the Ramada Plaza. Reminder, that's for family members of the athletes and partners. It's not necessarily for the athletes or the partners. This is a space for those family members to have some camaraderie, some downtime, and also to ask questions in regards to specific stuff as family members of Special Olympics competitors. As a reminder, family meals are not part of the program, although families can purchase their meals at Whitetail through the cafeteria line as anyone can. But we will provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner accordingly on the certain days for the delegation members. But typically, if the family members have hotel rooms, it's included with their room, depending on where they're staying. And so lunch and dinner, just as a reminder, families are on their own. In the event guide, there is a list of a lot of the local opportunities and restaurants, etc., to participate and have those meals. The overview schedule for the Winter Games, again, as we mentioned, Sunday will be the time trials on the 23rd, delegation registration. I say time trials for all events. Please note that the glide and super glide for Alpine will not be held on Sunday. Those will be held on Monday, and then the finals for those events will be on Tuesday. As a reminder also, every athlete and partner who's looking to compete in the finals, no questions about it, no exceptions, must compete and complete the time trials in order to be registered for the finals on Monday and Tuesday. As I mentioned, the opening ceremony will also be there at the end of the day on Sunday at the Whitetail Resort. Weather permitting, last year we had some challenges with the wind, but we did get through that. But if it's heavy rain or exceedingly bad weather, our backup plan is to have that on Monday morning. So that's something we just planned for, so just want you to be aware of that. And if that comes up, you'll definitely be in the know. Then, as we mentioned, Monday and Tuesday, we'll move into finals for all events. And we said the victory dance will be at the Ramada Plaza on Monday evening. So, again, just stressing that the schedules aren't final yet. We're still working through that. I want to make it user-friendly for all involved as much as we can. And as I said, we do have some training coming up this weekend. I forgot to mention this in the beginning. As I said, we just got some information about 5 minutes before the webinar started. We will make the announcement, and Zach will communicate with his snowshoeing contingents in regards to this weekend. Whitetail just informed us that they do not have the capacity or the weather and the snow, etc., to be able to provide a good training experience for snowshoeing this weekend. At this time, Alpine is still on for this weekend, but snowshoeing has been canceled for this weekend, the on-snow training. So again, I just stress that Alpine is still on. Snowshoeing is the only thing that's been canceled for this weekend, and Zach will send out the correspondence, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow. If anything changes with Alpine, obviously we'll let you know. We're trying to make that determination no later than early afternoon on Thursday. So here is the schedule. As you see, it's currently under review and very tentative, but just gives you a basic idea for Sunday. On the time trials, again, we're adjusting those a little bit here and there, making it user-friendly for all the parties, so there's not a lot of downtime. So you'll have this when we send out the slides later and then post them on the resource page. And we move right into Monday, the first day of finals. Again, tentative, but this gives you an idea of what we're looking to do there. And then right on into this last day of finals, Tuesday the 25th, basically the same thing. So some basic updates is, again, as we've done the last few years, time trials will be on the Sunday, creating the whole Winter Games flavor. The time trials will be scheduled by area, and again, we'll send out that information as we get those schedules further developed. We talked about the opening ceremony and dinner. we do have the on snow race training, so we are, like I said, continually observing and checking the weather situation. We did get some snow today, so here in Baltimore, and I know at Whitetail in the western part of the state. So that's a good sign. However, the bad sign is there's some rain following it up. So again, stay tuned. But as of now, Alpine is a go for this weekend. The on snow training is optional. It's not mandatory, but it's highly recommended, just to get everyone out there to see and work with the management teams to get prepared and do some gate trainings and get prepared for that competition flavor. Registration fees has not really been changed much. So basically, for full registration is the 2 nights lodging. That's $195 per delegate, and this should not be a surprise to anyone. Day of registration is $120 per delegate, but that does not include lodging. It does include the meals and rental, etc. So, and there you see the ratio again. So if you have any questions, just let us know on that. But the area directors have been aware of that and have budgeted accordingly. The Alpine event schedule, again, tentative, but these aren't tentative, other than the fact that if there are issues, we may look at which events, etc., can be offered to get the most in place for the competitors if there are significant weather challenges, whether it's lack of snow or wind, etc. So these are the events we're anticipating to offer: is the Giant Slalom, Super G, Glide, and Super Glide. And like I said, the Glide and Super Glide finals will be on Tuesday. And the finals for Slalom will be on Tuesday. Everything else there, as you see, will be the finals on Monday, the 24th, for Alpine. This is just an overview of the Whitetail Resort. Not much has changed here. If you look to your far left, for anyone that's new, the control center is in one of the side buildings. We will most likely have that up in the main lodge on time trial day, and then moving over to that location later on the 23rd for the remainder of the Winter Games. The opening ceremony will be on the back patio of the main lodge, weather permitting. We do have the ski storage area for those Alpine competitors. The same thing, we'll have the big buckets that you can drop those in for overnight storage. Family hospitality, we're hoping to have that in the second level of the lodge, but again, that's tentative, as we talked about earlier. You see the shuttle bus pickup and snowshoeing competition area heading down to your right on this slide. I will mention there were some questions and concerns last year about how often and frequent the shuttles were going. That's where you pick them up. I think there was, you see there right in the middle, leading to the stairs to the main lodge of this slide, where it says guest drop-off. That's where individuals will be dropped off after coming from the parking lot or from the snowshoeing venue. But where the pickup is up to your right a little bit, where you see the shuttle bus pickup. So I think there were some people waiting at the guest drop-off, assuming that's where they would get onto the shuttles to go to snowshoeing. So just kind of reiterate that to family members and anybody else in your delegation would be helpful. Alpine courses, again, very tentative. They're working on which courses are going to be available this weekend. We've got that close to being final, but not yet. Again, just for the on-snow training this weekend. But this is what we anticipate to use for Alpine, which I think is the same as the last few years. Again, weather permitting and snow permitting. Same thing for snowshoeing. Again, this slide is kind of obsolete at this point, as at least for this weekend. Hopefully, the next on snow training, this will be available to us. In anticipation for the second on snow training, you can see where the mountain ops areas would be for snowshoeing on the training times. And this is actually the time trials. So this setup is, again, what we're anticipating for time trials, and then we'll hit the locations which we anticipate and hope that will be at the bottom of the tubing park again for the finals on Monday and Tuesday. So this kind of shows you that area. Again, the same setup as last year for those of you who are familiar with that. And at this time, I will hand it over to Mike Sarnowski, take over the next few slides, and we'll go from there.
Hey, Steve, thank you. Hope everybody can hear me. Hopefully you're all familiar with these. There's no real surprises here in terms of our regular deadlines. As a strong reminder, this Thursday, so the day after tomorrow, is the deadline to get all of your people who are participating in training in snowshoeing or alpine skiing. They all need to be registered in GMS. If you don't know how, if you're not the person who handles that, someone in your area is designated for that purpose, and they should have that all handled. If there's some special situation, contact Steve, and we'll see what we can do to help you with that. But really do need to get all that in. That will determine who is eligible to participate potentially in Winter Games. Then, and again, anybody who's participating must have their medical, and the volunteers must have all their volunteer certifications, their volunteer screenings, background screening, their protected behaviors, and concussion. Those all need to be in place now before they even start to participate. But we do give you a couple days after the training registration deadline to get any that have not been submitted to headquarters yet, to get them into us. That is not in any way, shape, or form to be misconstrued that people can participate without their forms being in. But this just gives you that little extra time. And those forms need to be valid through February 25th, which is the last day of the games. That's also the date by which your coaches need to have their sports certification completed and submitted by that date. Competition registration deadline, the 13th, is when their events need to be entered into GMS for athletes and unified partners. Any of them that don't have an event entered in their, an event and a level, they won't have a score, but an event and a level entered by then will be deleted from Winter Games. And then unique to Winter Games and one or two other sports, there's a deadline for event or level changes. That is Sunday at Winter Games itself. Since we have found following time trials, some athletes or coaches find that some athletes should be on at a different level in Alpine or a different distance in snowshoeing, and we'll provide you with the specific time by which we need to have that information. We can't start the divisioning process for the next day's competition until we have all that in, so it'll probably be late afternoon, right shortly after the time trials have completed, the time trial portion of Winter Games. So yeah, so again, that's all pretty straightforward. Steve, if you want to go to the next slide. So again, to qualify for Winter Games, need to complete all the registration requirements, all the deadlines, all their forms need to be in. In addition, athletes and unified partners must participate in at least 3 on-snow training sessions. The 2 race training and gate training sessions that we're hosting, and our games management team and sports management teams are hosting on January 11th and February 8th. They each can count as one of those sessions, on-snow sessions there. Alpine would need to get another, has to participate in at least one of those gate training sessions. Or if somehow you have access to someone who can set gates, that's a potential option. I don't know that anybody does. For snowshoe, the on-snow training, or snowshoeing, I'm sorry, before Steve corrects me, for snowshoeing, the on-snow does not have to be at the mountain. That can be out at wherever there's snow on the ground. So that could be part of your regular practice sessions, and just have some mock races going on with that. And then, should we need to, we'll need to have some evidence from you that's completed. We're not going through and tracking you and so on down the line. but if there is any question, there must be some evidence that your athletes and partners have actually completed that process. That could be a picture, that could be any of a number of things. And of course, if they're at the On Snow that we're hosting, we'll have their registration from there. Okay, Steve, next slide. Thanks. No changes here in terms of coach requirements. We've mentioned before, since they are volunteers, we need to have their Class A volunteer application, protected behaviors, and concussion. In addition, to be a coach, as opposed to a sports volunteer or a general volunteer or a chaperone, to be a coach, they must have completed coaching Special Olympics athletes. If they're only coaching unified, I don't know that that applies to anything here. There's a separate coaching unified sports course that they could take. In coaching Special Olympics athletes, we have offered it numerous times live over the last several months, and it's also available as an online course. And Special Olympics Maryland will reimburse the registration fee up to a total of $20. I think that particular course is like $17, $16.99 or something like that. And the link to do all that, to register or to take it online, is available on the coach's resource page. For head coaches, above and beyond those requirements, they also need to have their sports certification or have completed a coach training in their particular sport. The standard now is that no training program can participate in any competition without a fully certified head coach. We're being somewhat flexible on this when an area director requests it, up through basketball this year. Thereafter, that will be a firm requirement. Again, those certifications need to be valid through the date of the competition, which in this case would be February 25th. And then the next slide, I believe, is the diagram that Janet compiled for us based on the standards. This kind of walks you through the different levels of volunteers and coaching, and you can see going across there, everybody needs volunteer orientation that your area hosts, volunteer application and background check, and the protected behaviors. Be a sport volunteer, which could be a sport coordinator and such. They need to have the concussion course. To be an assistant coach, need to have completed coaching Special Olympics athletes. Head coach needs to also have completed a sports-specific course. And then an advanced coach, we'll have some stuff coming out shortly, but we will be offering the Principles of Coaching course, which has not been offered for a bit. We'll be offering that in the first quarter here. All of those certifications are good for 3 years. And I'm not sure if that's my last slide, Steve, but, oh, okay, so yeah. As Steve had mentioned, the coach race and gate training on snow, we found out shortly before the webinar started that we will not be able to host that for snowshoeing at that time, at that location. And again, Zach is looking for options. For Alpine, it's still planning to be then. If for some reason we do need to cancel, we will work out some alternative, and we'll communicate directly with coaches. But be sure that your coaches are taking care of that. Yeah, this will be done on the 11th, concurrent with the athlete on snow, which Steve will talk about in a moment. One thing to keep in mind is if you do have athletes and partners up there participating, if you have several coaches who are going to be participating in the coach training component, that you have someone there to assist with supervising the athletes when the coaches are unavailable. And then one other note, for that training, the costs of the lift tickets and so on down the line will be charged back to the areas. And again, that does count as the sports-specific portion of coach training for coaches. Some coaches have gotten their sports-specific in a classroom session that was held back in, I believe, November. But this can count as a sports-specific portion, provided that the coach stays for the entire session and actively participates in the coaching. Coming on that day and skiing with your own athletes does not count as coach training. which we run into that in the past with a couple people being somehow confused that would count as coach training. But just to be clear, it absolutely does not. So anyway, I know with winter games we have a pretty solid record with the on snow or with the sports component of our coaches being trained. We're catching up a bit on that, coaching Special Olympics athletes with that. So Steve, I think that's it for me, unless anybody had a question at this point. I don't see any hands.
Yep. No, I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you very much. Okay. And continuing with the on snow trainings, as we talked about, the 11th is coming weekend, and then February 8th is the second one. The sports management personnel for each of the sports will be there. For Alpine, they'll have the courses set up in a augmented way or a confined way in regards to getting some gates on the slopes, so you can have that training. And then they're there to talk with you as coaches and with athletes and partners to give feedback in regards to any techniques or things to work on leading up to the Winter Games. Similarly with snowshoeing, with the athletes, strategies, fitness, working on the length of the strides, that kind of thing. So as Mike mentioned, all the on-snow meals and costs there will be charged back to the area programs. If there are any, which I know there's a few at least who have indicated to us from the Alpine perspective throughout the state who are making hotel arrangements leading up to this weekend. If you do so, that's fine, but you are on your own for that. That is not something that Special Olympics Maryland as the state organization offers, but please work that out with your area or county leadership and go from there.
Steve, we do have one question. How do we get coaches into a coaches training session on Saturday?
On this Saturday, as far as coaches for this Saturday for Alpine, they should have been registered through the information that was sent out from Ryan regarding Alpine. For snowshoeing, obviously, that one has been canceled, and Zach will follow up with any additional information.
If that was Al or someone else who was asking that, Al, reach out to Ryan or to Steve. We can handle a limited number of coaches who had not previously registered. The challenge is we can't have just everybody walk up because Matt and Kathy and their team wouldn't be prepared for that. So if we're talking one person or two people, that's probably not an issue. Hopefully that answers your question. But reach out to Ryan. His email address is later on in the slide deck, or Steve, and we can check and see if that's a possibility for you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for stepping in, Mike. And it looks like that did answer the question. But again, if you have any other questions that you don't think of tonight, don't hesitate to follow up with the proper personnel after the webinar and the upcoming days. So we'll go on to the next slide here. You can schedule your own training leading up to the Winter Games. Whitetail has made the offer as they have in the past with offering discounted rates for Special Olympics groups. There's the number for Whitetail, the group sales office. Again, just identify yourself as Special Olympics Maryland. They've been trained and are aware that these discounted rates are available to us as an organization. These, if you go straight to when you arrive at Whitetail, if you take this opportunity, do not go straight to the ticket booths. You must go to the group sales office, which is the building as you're walking up the main walk, right to the right before you get to the ticket booths. So that's the group sales office. If you go to the ticket booths, you're going to be on your own, and you most likely will not get these rates. So again, just emphasize that. Sorry for the pause there. I'm under the weather and had to take a cough break. Ski Liberty and Round Top have been gracious enough in the past to also offer discounted rates. At this time, we don't have those exact rates for Ski Liberty, but same thing, you can call the number there and ask for the group sales and identify them as Special Olympics Maryland, that you're coming to Whitetail, and they're all the same ownership, so they will work with you to give whatever discounts. It should be very comparable, similar to the whitetail costs, but again, I just don't have a firm a number for those right now.
We have one question that came in. That is, when do we register for the February 8th snowshoeing training?
I'm not sure if we've actually set that date at this point, but good question. And right after the on-snow training this weekend, both Snowshoeing and Alpine will be reaching out to the coaches and include the area directors in that communication process. And again, we're pretty flexible, so I just have that ready. The request will come out sometime next week. We technically don't need the final numbers until about a week out, so we'll be communicating that to you shortly. And
then just another quick note from Al. He said that Ryan put out rates for Liberty and Round Top via email back in December. He doesn't have access to them right at the moment, but he does have them, so most of you should have that email from Ryan as well for Alpine ski rates.
And then also, just to clarify, the difference between the flexibility for the 8th of February as opposed to what I was just saying a few minutes ago with the one this weekend is we're not lining up clinicians to train coaches, which takes a larger kind of manpower or person power to make that happen. With the athletes, we're setting courses, and there's a much greater flexibility on the 8th to have folks attend to register somewhat later in the process. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Al. We'll look to clarify those rates. Again, I know that we had an idea of the rates at Liberty and Round Top, and I'm not sure if those were 100% confirmed. They may have been. So anyway, it'll be right around that same area within $1 or $2, so it's not a deal breaker. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention, those of you who are involved with the World Games, the athletes who are our current nominees from St. Mary's, Anne Arundel, and Carroll County. Obviously, the World Games at this point have been canceled, at least for Sweden. We don't have any further information in regards to what the plans are coming, although we know Special Olympics International and Special Olympics USA and others are working on options. I say that only because at this time the possibility does exist that there's a postponed or cancellation of the training camp for Special Olympics USA coming up. So I only say that for St. Mary's, Anne Arundel, and Carroll County. For those current nominees who are planning on going to the time trials, which conflicted, or to the training camp, which conflicted with our Winter Games, I highly suggest you go ahead and register those individuals for the Winter Games, and be prepared that if the fact arises or the case arises where something gets postponed or canceled in regards to training camp, etc., leading to the World Games, that those athletes do have the opportunity to participate in our Winter Games. With that being said, here are the individuals, and obviously when I send out the information, it'll come from my email, but these are the sports directors. If you have specific questions, check our coaches resource page and or reach out to Zach Centron for snowshoeing, Ryan Kelchner for Alpine, Melissa Anger, she works in the control center for general information, but I would be your best point of contact for that at this point. So as we look for any more remaining questions coming through, we'll just hit a couple of the upcoming slides. This should not be any news to anyone, but there's just a lot of forms and things we just obviously like to include in this so that you're aware with the information that's available. Again, as Mike mentioned, no one, volunteer, etc., can participate in Special Olympics in any manner at any time without the proper application process and certifications needed, especially athletes, well, not especially in all cases, but athletes without a current medical. If you have one that's expired, they are not permitted to participate in training or practices without a valid and current medical. So please make sure that you enforce that as well. And then, again, we just have all of the contacts information in regards to submission of medicals with Dottie Rush, a staff member here who hopefully all of you guys, if not most of you, are familiar with. And with technical challenges, the communication and the contact information here as well. And again, we'll just go through these forms. I'm not going to hit this. This is more as just reminders so that you know the information's here. Here's examples of the athlete medical forms and the sign-offs and waivers and the volunteer applications, emergency care, that kind of stuff. We also have at the very end our incident report form to make sure you guys as leaders have them with you and the coaches do in case there's any accident or property damage or whatever. You can fill out that form, and we have that for insurance purposes. So again, just a resource for you guys. Hopefully everyone's aware of that information, but again, that's there for you to access as needed. As we offer one last round or one last session here for any questions, on behalf of Special Olympics Maryland, on behalf of the athletes and the partners that and the coaches that you guys lead in your endeavors as a HOD or area leadership, obviously it cannot be done without you, and we appreciate all of the efforts that you've made to make this possible for the athletes, partners, coaches, make sure everyone's safe and in compliance with the forms and deadlines and papers and certifications. It's a big task, and we recognize that, and together we make this happen. So without you, Special Olympics Maryland as a state office doesn't have a purpose. We're here to serve you guys and the athletes and partners and others throughout the state. So we really just want to take this opportunity to thank you for all of your efforts, and know that we're here. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to support you. And Zach's saying we have no questions at this time. So again, we'll email this out to you in the next day or two. We'll have it on the coach's resource page for those of you, at least in Alpine for now. We anticipate seeing you up there this weekend, and have safe travels if you're out driving around this evening with the challenging weather situation we've been dealt. But again, winter's here. We've got snow. That's a good sign. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I am signing off. And again, thank you for your...
Steve,
oh, yeah.
if you, just to facilitate this, if you could, after you do your goodbyes, and thank you everybody for joining us. If you can keep the, you can end the recording, but keep the line open so I can chat with Katie. Oh, okay, Katie, I'll call you on your cell. We'll do that instead. Never mind. So, thank you everybody, and appreciate everything everybody does, and looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you on Saturday.
Everyone, and good evening.